Hey guys, welcome back. I hope you're all doing well. Today we are in my neighbor's yard and we are going to be overwintering her dahlias outdoors. Now before we get started, there are a few things that I wanted to talk to you guys about and then we will jump right in. Before we overwinter our dahlias, whether we are going to lift them from the ground or leave them in for the winter, you want to make sure you have a first frost. So you can tell we just recently had ours. All of the leaves on our dahlias are wilty, they're dark, so they're done for this season. If you don't have a first frost by November 15th, you can go ahead and cut them down and lift them or leave them in the ground at that point, because at this point your dahlias have probably already been in the ground for about 120 days, so they're ready to go to sleep for the season. And when we talk about overwintering dahlias or plants in general, we're just talking about prepping them for the winter months. A lot of times this includes mulching over your plants, especially if they're a little bit more tender, just to make sure they have an extra layer of protection through the winter months. So if you are going to choose to leave them in the ground, this is what you're going to need. You will need a nice tarp. You will need some straw, some leaves, or any sort of mulch that you can get your hands on, whether you buy it or you have it from your own garden or from your fall decorations. That's what you're really going to utilize for this process. The other thing to consider is what zone you garden in. We garden in zone 8B here in Oregon, and for the most part, dahlias can overwinter outside in zones 8 and above. However, I have heard some gardeners have success overwintering them in zones 6 and 7 by doing what we're going to be doing today. Now, if you're going to lift your dahlias, I typically cut them down to about 8 to 12 inches because that will help us lift them from the ground, and we'll do a whole separate video on that. But if you are going to overwinter them in the ground or in your landscape or in your raised beds, you want to make sure that you're going to cut the stalk down below the soil level. So that's what we'll do first, is cut them all down, and then we are going to cover them with the tarp. We'll put in our mulch. So today we're going to be using straw and some leaves, and then we'll just cover it back up with the other part of the tarp, which is totally not necessary to do that second layer of the tarp cover. But the only reason why we're doing that was we're trying to prevent some of the leaves and the straw to blow away into their landscape. So again, totally optional to do that. If you don't mind leaves or straw kind of flying around when you have those gusts of wind, then you don't have to worry about that process. But this is just going to keep this place nice and tidy. All right, we got that all done with minimal mess, which is always a win for me. So again, what we've done is we lay down our tarp, we put in the straw, and then we put in our leaves, and then we folded the tarp back over again just to give it extra insulation and to make sure that nothing blows over into the landscape. I went ahead and used some logs at the end of the beds just to make sure or ensure that the tarp stays down and doesn't blow over. Again, this is totally optional. If you're not going to put a second tarp on top or fold it over, I would go ahead and maybe wet the leaves just a little bit just to kind of weigh it down a little bit more. I will probably just add a couple more logs in front of the bed here just so this doesn't blow over, but you know what, it's pretty heavy under there now, and I doubt we're gonna get wind strong enough to blow this over. But again, this is just going to ensure that everything stays nice and neat and nothing blows over into their landscape, because she loves to keep her garden here very tidy. So this will kind of help with that. So that was super easy. So if you're going to overwinter your dahlias that are in the landscape, I would do this just a little bit differently. Instead of using straw or even leaves, I would buy some dark, heavy mulch and use that, because I think, again, when you're looking at a flower bed, I just like the aesthetic of the dark soil. It still makes everything else pop, like your evergreens. So I think it just looks a little bit neater than using leaves or straw like we did here. But because this is a raised bed, we're not going to really worry about looking in this area of the garden over the winter time. So this is going to work perfect. So we will go ahead and leave this bed like this all winter long. And in the springtime, when there's no more chance of frost, around Mother's Day is typically for us out here, we will go ahead and lift all of this up, get rid of all of the material. I will go ahead and amend the soil with some nutrients for the dahlias so they can thrive next year. I'll probably use bulb tone and just work it into the soil. Again, around Mother's Day is when we typically plant out our dahlias, and then they'll be all good to go for the next growing season. So again, this process is super easy. It does not have to be complicated. If you don't have a tarp, you could also use heavy duty plastic, almost like the plastic that construction workers use. That also works really well. But yeah, let me know in the comments down below if you guys have ever overwintered your dahlias outdoors and what you've done differently and the zones that you live in. That way we can kind of see if you've had success, if you live in zones 8 or below, etc. So anyways, thank you guys so much for watching today's video, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye-bye.